Now, all eyes are on the U.S. state of Wisconsin, where Donald Trump will be named the Republican presidential nominee at the party's national convention taking place this week in Milwaukee. Now, Trump is due to receive the approval from 2,400 delegates for the presidential ticket. He has been the party's de facto nominee for months after sweeping aside a field of challengers during the Republican primaries. Now, Trump will also likely name his vice president pick during the convention. Around 50,000 attendees are expected to turn up at the four-day event. The convention features a lineup of conservative speakers whose remarks will highlight key issues, including immigration, the economy, and abortion. The event is an opportunity for the party to rally supporters across the country for an election that could hinge on turnout. But the events of the weekend weighing on the convention in Milwaukee. The assassination attempt at former President Donald Trump has brought uncertainty into an already tumultuous presidential campaign. The attack also raised fears of further political violence in the run-up to November's election. FBI has identified the gunman as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. The FBI is investigating the attack as attempted assassination and act of domestic terror. But the motivation of the shooter is not yet known.
The American people can rest assured that we will leave no stone unturned as we work to get to the bottom of what happened yesterday.
We are investigating this as an assassination attempt, but also looking at it as a potential domestic terrorism act. So our counterterrorism division and our criminal divisions are working jointly together to determine the motive in this case.
Now, for more on developments in the U.S., we have Simon Marks joining us live from Milwaukee and Benji Hyer in Washington, D.C. Simon, let's go to you first. Now, the convention will begin in just a few hours. Simon, what's the mood like in Milwaukee today, especially in the wake of Trump's assassination attempt?
Well, heightened expectations here, Shah, as delegates continue to stream into this city. The talk of the town is, of course, about that attempted assassination of Donald Trump on Saturday and his reaction to it, those iconic images that were captured at the scene, images of defiance, Republicans argue, and images of strength. And so I think that there is no question that when Donald Trump makes his first appearance at the convention, and that could come as early as Monday evening here in Milwaukee, he will be absolutely on the receiving end of a rapturous hero's welcome, and that Republicans are now poised to unite around his candidacy here in Milwaukee in a way that would not necessarily have occurred before the attempted assassination on Saturday. No question at all that it has changed the mood as Republicans stream into this city for 4 days of pageantry that will lead up to Donald Trump formally accepting the party's nomination at the arena on Thursday night here, Friday morning, Singapore, Hong Kong time, but also no doubt whatsoever that Republicans were already feeling very optimistic about the outcome of this election before the attempted assassination, given all the difficulties that Joe Biden has been facing over the last 2 weeks and questions about his ability to remain in the race. In an interview that he gave shortly before he arrived in Milwaukee, Donald Trump told a reporter, "I should be dead." And he says he's completely rewriting his acceptance speech in light of that experience, that brutal experience that he had on Saturday, and planning to call for unity in the United States, very much echoing the comments that Joe Biden made in his address to the nation here last night.
And another outcome that we are looking at, Simon, is Trump's potential running mate suspense over that, and that could end this week. Who is more likely to make the cut?
Yeah, I think that could end in a matter of hours. It could even end here on Monday night. There was talk before the shooting on Saturday in Pennsylvania of Donald Trump planning to unveil his running mate at the convention's first night on Monday evening. There's an enormous amount of focus on a couple of front runners in the race to join Donald Trump on the campaign trail at his side. Governor Doug Burgum of South Dakota is considered a relatively sober political choice by Donald Trump, more aligned with the kind of experience that someone like Mike Pence brought to the ticket the first time around for Donald Trump. But I think there is a major expectation now that the running mate may be Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. And one indication of that was that yesterday, Sunday here in the United States, Senator Vance received Secret Service protection, we believe, arising out of course, a security review that has been taking place following the shooting in Pennsylvania. So he's not confirmed, he's not announced, but I think most people at this convention now expect J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, much more aligned with Donald Trump's style of politics to become Donald Trump's running mate. But as I was saying, so much of what's taking place here now relates to the aftermath of that assassination attempt on Saturday. And Benji Hyer, my colleague back in Washington, D.C., has been following all the developments relating to that story over the last 2 days. And Benji, give us a sense of the latest in the investigation into the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
Simon, there are multiple questions that are coming out of this incident, and at the fore are two main ones. How and why? The head of the Secret Service will be briefing lawmakers here in Washington, D.C. shortly. These investigations into the planning, the motive, could well take months. In the meantime, Donald Trump is getting enhanced security. What we know so far is that the suspect, the alleged assassin, a 20-year-old Pennsylvania resident, Thomas Matthew Cook, was positioned on that rooftop outside the perimeter of the event, a position which would typically be outside of the remit, therefore, of the Secret Service that's taking care of what's going on within that perimeter, and therefore would also involve the assistance of local law enforcement. But there are still questions about the communication and the coordination between law enforcement and Secret Service on the day and in the days leading up to that rally in Pennsylvania. We're learning in past hours that the Secret Service had specially identified that rooftop in question as a possible vulnerability before the event, and of course footage we've seen since shows that the snipers were trained on that position just as the shooter was about to take aim and ultimately fired towards the direction of Donald Trump. At least so far there has been no confirmed motive from the gunman. Obviously the FBI have been round to his residence. They say that the family has been fully cooperating with this investigation. It was the father's legally bought weapon that was used in this attack, and we are likely to learn more details in coming hours and days, Simon, given the fact that, for example, the shooter's mobile phone has been taken into a lab that could provide certain information about GPS movements, whether he'd been to the rally site before. What we know also is that he wasn't on intelligence services radars. There was no sign of mental health issues or any sign either of co-conspirators.
Meanwhile, Benji, what are we hearing from the Democratic Party about the events this weekend?
Well, the main narrative, the main sentiment is coming from the very top. President Joe Biden, who gave an Oval Office address last night, Sunday night, prime time in the United States. He said that there are differences at the ballot box to be had, but those differences need to be resolved not by bullets, not at the barrel of the gun, but at the ballot box. And I think the main sentiment that has come from the White House is, yes, the higher the stakes, the more fervour the passion, but it is important to lower the temperature here, to take some of the increased intensity and heightened language out of this election campaign, which is already very politically fraught and very volatile indeed. The problem is for the Biden administration, for his campaign more generally, is that there is now a very difficult path forward on how to proceed. The main attack lines on Donald Trump, that he's, for example, a threat to democracy, that might not be taken so kindly by the American public, who are perhaps now more hostile towards pointed criticisms of the, at least to be very soon, confirmed Republican nominee for the presidential race in 2024. There has also been, of course, discussions, debates within the Democrat Party about Joe Biden's position as a candidate. Those are likely to be parked for now, meaning it is even more likely that it will be a Biden-Trump show-off. And I think the main question will be whether those two men can bring the country together, whether they can unite this nation, or ultimately whether this will lead to a further cycle of vengeance and retribution.
Benji, Simon, thank you very much for keeping us updated on the developments in the U.S. That was Benji Hyer live in Washington, D.C., and Simon Marks in Milwaukee.